Hey there, welcome back to the Business Behind the Game, where we break down the business side of sports from emerging trends to the people and companies shaping the industry today. I'm Kush, and today we have a really exciting guest, Michael Criscito Jr. Michael works in golf talent and consulting at WME Sports, one of the biggest talent agencies in the world. He's a Columbia University graduate with a master's in sports management and a 4.0 GPA, and his path to WME runs through some of the most respected names in the industry, running through Excel Sports Management, the USTA and US Open, Prince Marketing Group, and the Doman Group working with NFL clients. Before any of that, he spent time in financial consulting and tech sales. Michael's journey from finance and tech sales to athlete representation at WME Sports shows what it really takes to break into this industry. Before we start today, Michael, how are you?
I'm doing well, Coach. Thanks for having me. Excited to be on.
Yep, I'm great, and I'm really excited to get this started too. Let's start from the beginning. Before sports and entertainment, you spent time in financial consulting, FTI consulting, and in tech sales. What were you doing in those roles, and what made you decide to pivot into sports?
Yeah, sure. So when I was an undergrad at Bucknell University, I had my first ever internship at FTI Consulting. I was in their restructuring group. So essentially, at a large finance and tech consulting firm like FTI, I was helping out with bankruptcy cases. So when large companies would file for bankruptcy, Chapter 11, our firm would then bid to help retain that business, to help lead them outside of bankruptcy until solvency again. So I was
Mm-hmm.
working on cases like that, which was great. It was a great experience for my first job out of college and my first few internships. I was in New York City, which was a fantastic experience, and
Yeah,
definitely learned a lot about hard skills like Microsoft Excel, financial modeling,
yeah,
putting together PowerPoint presentations and pitch decks. So that was a great experience in that regard. And then after FTI, I wanted to do something a little bit more interpersonal that fit into my
mm-hmm.
skill set a bit more.
Yeah,
So went into tech sales, where I worked at Trustpilot as a account development rep. So learned some softer skills in that role, like cold calling, truly pitching and kind of soft and hard selling and getting deals across the line. And I think it was after that experience during COVID where I took a step back and was like, this is great. This has been fun experience and
yeah,
I'm learning and growing, but I'm not super passionate about what I'm doing. And I was able to then, take a step to think, okay, what am I passionate about? And I had always wanted to work with talent. Now, whether that was, actors, actresses, musicians, athletes, I didn't really have a strong preference at that point. I just wanted to work with high level talent and
mm-hmm.
help them. It sounds a little silly, but I, watched Entourage and that entire series and Ballers,
Mm-hmm.
that entire series when I was in college. Of course, as Entourage as a rerun. I'm not that old, but
Yeah,
it was something that made me really interested in the space and just, hey, how can I do this? This looks fun and cool and exciting. I want to do that. And there isn't really a blueprint to doing that, but I just started researching and trying to, crack my way in the doors in the mailroom at, CAA, UTA, WME, and it was during COVID, so nothing was really happening. And it was not a great time to try to break into the
yeah,
industry, especially pivoting. So I had to look for other alternative routes in and decided that
mm-hmm.
grad school would be a good a kind of next pivot point for me.
Yeah. That was actually my next question. You went on to get your master's in sports management at Columbia, and you graduated with a 4.0 GPA. What made you choose that path, and what did that program actually teach you that you couldn't have learned on the job itself?
Yeah, a great question. So as I chose that path primarily because the traditional route in just via the mailroom or an entry level job at one of these major agencies was just the timing is was not there with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking to myself, okay, well, I need to make this pivot anyway from finance. Let me at least work on myself and get new skills and
Yeah.
put another kind of brand name behind me that helps with this pivot. And when looking in the programs, I just noticed that Columbia and other schools like Georgetown and Michigan had these sports management master's programs. And I thought that'd be a great way to make that pivot while learning a new skill set and going back to school to get another degree, which I'd always wanted to do. So I had found Columbia, and of course, being an Ivy League school, that obviously drew me in. And being in New
Yeah.
York, where I was already located, it kind of made sense. They have one of the best programs in the world, and the reason I chose it is a lot of the faculty are adjunct professors who were working at agencies. I remember one of my law professors was working at CAA at the
Mm-hmm.
time, and I think that really stood out to me that I could connect with some of these professionals via my coursework and get some real world experience while
Yeah.
also helping get a foot in the door. And I'd say that you know the skill sets you learn in grad school, especially that program, outside of course, how to professionally network and
Yeah.
maneuver around the agency landscape in New York City, was really, in my opinion, like negotiation and contract work. Like I took a couple law classes and a couple negotiation classes at Columbia that were just extremely helpful. Looking at a contract for the first time, knowing what to look for, how to redline a contract, understanding the nuance and skill set behind negotiation, which is kind of an art and a science. So I think
Mm-hmm.
those are things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to pick up right away, if you just went in, to an entry level job at an agency. But that coursework, while of course it's coursework and theoretical in some way, there were a lot of practical applications of it. Like in our negotiation class, we did actually have mock negotiations multiple times a day throughout the day for an entire week straight. That helps at least form that skill
Yeah.
into something that's whether or not permanent, but something that you're working on constantly.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a very well good way to approach it. Basically, break it down and then make sure you're trying to implement it too. So whatever you learn is actually being used, and obviously, it's hard to pick that up. As you just mentioned, it's hard to pick that up on the spot, especially going into a world like especially as a sports agent. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
and the funny thing with the negotiation class and turning it practical is I would start to try those negotiation techniques in other areas of life. Because obviously at that point I wasn't negotiating any contracts for
yeah,
athletes
yeah,
or talent, but I would when I was negotiating my rent in New York City or other provisions or even at a bookshop where they're selling used books. Like just try my negotiation
yeah.
tactics out in everyday life was kind of a fun way to practice it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, just getting daily experience, and obviously, that's going to lead to bigger things. And when you're negotiating things like sports contracts and deals, those skills really come in handy there. My next question was, during grad school, you did internships at Excel Sports Management, Prince Marketing Group, and the Doman Group at the same time as your coursework. And obviously, Columbia, as you mentioned, is an Ivy League school, so balancing graduate academics and real industry experience isn't something that's really easy to do. How did you manage to do that?
I think you just have to you realize that those internships are what's going to lead you to either your next internship or your full-time job. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to treat that as gold and do everything you can to make it work. So I would do my internships during the day, and I would structure my classes to be at night from like 6 to 8 and then 8 to 10. So I could work all day like 9 to 6 and then go to my two classes at night and just kind of power through it that way. So they're
Mm-hmm.
long days, commuting to an office and then taking the subway all the way up to Columbia and back down. But
Yeah.
it's just what you have to do. And there's so many people who want to be in sports and say that, but I think the people who end up making it are the ones who will truly like sacrifice everything, especially in the beginning, social life, personal life to make it work. But there's also balance, and you find ways to, get better and faster at things like coursework, and then, being able to dive a little bit deeper into the meaningful internships that you have and make connections there, and just most importantly, learn a new skill set that make yourself valuable for whatever that next chapter or role is.
Yeah, definitely. I think time management is a really critical skill to have, and you building that in Colombia and managing internships is really really important. So now I wanted to shift over into you more breaking into talent representation. At Prince Marketing Group, you assisted a talent agent representing Hall of Fame athletes and entertainers like Jerry West, Charlie Sheen, and Carmen Electra. What did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, so I was really lucky to be able to intern for Darren Prince, who's one of the most, legendary talent agents of all time. You named a few of the names that he's represented across their careers, and working for him, I moved my life to LA for essentially a semester so that I could do that and just get into that world.
Yeah,
And he's someone that just instilled on me that like relationships are everything, and like your trust and your word is everything. And the reason he's able to represent those types of stars for their entire careers is because they trust him.
yeah,
So I think talent, unlike finance or sales. Like you're dealing with people, not necessarily numbers or products. So you have to position them and sell them and work with them very differently than you do in those other industries.
Yeah.
And to me, that's all about trust and honesty, which is what he, instilled and what obviously he has with his clients, which is why he's been so successful for so long. So I think that's one, the main thing I learned working for him is that, you can also be friends with your clients and have a personal relationship with them. And that business, while some people say not to take it personally, is definitely personal. And so that, you can take it personally, especially when you have relationships with your clients. So that's the main thing I learned working under him.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's very, very important. Obviously, networking was one part, but having like a sustainable network which you're constantly connecting with is completely different thing because that's when your connections are really more impactful in that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then after Prince Marketing Group, you then moved on to Excel Sports Management, working with some of the biggest names in digital, baseball, football, and basketball. What was it like stepping into a talent marketing role at that level, and what did a typical deal you worked on look like?
Yeah, so that was probably one of the biggest game changers for me was getting that associate level internship when I was in grad school, which I did my last semester of grad school. So then
Mm-hmm.
that was in New York. So then I moved back to New York for my last semester of grad school and then for the internship and Excel, obviously being one of the major players in the sports agency space. I was so fired up and excited to be there and the office, the culture, the people. It was incredible and it was very different than my previous role, which was a smaller, boutique agency. This was a
Mm-hmm.
major agency that when you walked in the doors, there's multiple floors in the office, there's tons of people, there's this energy and it feels a bit different. And I was super lucky to work on some of our professional baseball talent,
Yeah.
a couple of our NBA talents, some of their digital talent and just help out in kind of twofold, really with executing current endorsement deals that those players had. Now, whether that be, I'll just use an example, a player having a deal with, DirecTV or Gatorade, and let's say they have a obligated social media post they have to put out. I was working with their, point manager for that player to help decide, okay, when are these posts going out? Let's make sure we have a calendar in place so that the talent is
Yeah.
aware of, when to post because a lot of these guys and girls are not natural content creators. They're athletes first and foremost.
Yeah.
So you really have to make sure there's a good schedule in place for the deliverables they have to perform as part of their endorsement agreement. And then helping with the creative, which was really fun. Like let's say there was an ad, or even a longer social media long form post, like
Yeah.
coming up with the copy, coming up with the script, like how are we going to put this brand's messaging that they're trying to achieve in the words and in the persona of the player so that it's the most authentic piece possible. So that was
Mm-hmm.
really exciting was I was able to have my leave my own mark on creating what the actual, social creative of that deliverable looks like. And having seen that ad or that commercial come to life was just really exciting and really cool. So that was kind of the first piece of the job. And the second piece is, of course, then generating new business and new
Yeah.
partnerships. And the name of that game is until you have your own relationships, it's a lot of cold outreach and cold emailing and
Yeah.
cold calling. I remember messaging, and reaching out to hundreds of car dealerships trying to get NIL players,
Yeah.
partnerships, which is a really fun experience. And it's great. And sometimes it leads to conversations and sometimes it doesn't. But just that experience of being able to pitch talent and navigate those conversations is exciting. And there are some really cool things I got to work on. There's a couple really large snack brands that wanted to partner with some of our marquee MLB talent and their foundations and seeing that come to life was really cool and exciting. And there were some conversations I started that helped, you know, get other deals done, after I left via those relationships. So it was an incredible experience, and it definitely solidified I had already thought I had known I wanted to be a talent agent, but
Yeah.
it solidified that I wanted to be an agent for sure after doing that internship. And it had shown me that I wanted to be on more of the marketing endorsement side rather than the on-field or on-court contract negotiation side, which are two very separate parts of the business.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think I can definitely relate with you on the cold emailing, cold calling part because I do the same thing for my podcast, and that's the same way how I got you is just sitting down, DMing people on LinkedIn, finding people's emails, and I think once you build that credibility, it's a lot easier to get guests because even at the start of this podcast, when I first started it last May, it was really slow trying to get people when I only had one or two people actually on the podcast. But once you start landing bigger names and more people, that's when you build that strong credibility.
Yeah, and I mean, as someone who reaches out to a lot of people cold, still to this day over email and LinkedIn, I try to be as good as possible about responding to others who do the same to me. And so I'm glad it worked out for us to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
connected.
yeah, for sure. Now I wanted to shift over a little bit to your life at WME Sports. You're now at WME Sports working specifically in golf and tennis talent and consulting. For people who don't know, what does WME Sports actually do and how is it different from the other agencies that you've worked at?
Yeah, sure. So in 2013, WME, which is William Morris Endeavor, which is, one of the three largest talent agencies in the world, traditionally a Hollywood talent agency, acquired IMG Sports,
Mm,
which of course had a very robust golf, tennis, Olympic action sports division. So to this day now at WME Sports, we have a golf, tennis, Olympic and action sports division. We also represent quite a few F1 drivers as well as soccer players for their
mm,
off-field marketing. We have probably about 100, over 100 ATP tennis players we represent, over 10 men on the PGA Tour that we represent, over
mm,
30 women on the LPGA Tour that we represent. We also represent a handful of content creators that delve into the golf and tennis landscape as well. So very robust roster over here. And as agents, our job is to manage those talents, and of course, bring them endorsement deals and appearances, which is how those talents make money outside of
yeah,
their earnings, of course.
yeah. Yeah, and you just mentioned what WME Sports does, and I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into what you specifically do. So, what does a day in your role actually look like, and what are you spending most of your time on?
Yeah, so my role has shifted a bit since I joined. I joined about 2.5 years ago, specifically in our golf division, which
Mm,
houses those, tour players, LPGA tour players, and influencers that we represent. So when I first came on, my role was very much so supporting one of our, senior agents who
mm,
manages one of the top, tour players in the world, and really just, supporting him and his clients day to day. And doing so, that then transformed, my role changed a bit into then, managing some of our golf influencer clients in their day to day, and then even more broadly, working across our full roster of golf talent and procuring endorsement deals. So to this day, that's still probably the main function of my role is
mm,
talking to brands daily and, helping them understand why partnering with our golf talent makes sense for their brand and for their messaging and for their mission and why there's ROI in sponsoring a PGA Tour, LPGA Tour player, um, and helping them, procure whether that's an appearance, whether that's a logo patch on their playing kit or headwear bag, which I'm sure you see when you tune into the
yeah,
PGA Tour.
yeah,
And, outside of that, there's of course social only campaigns like, NIL based campaigns on Instagram and TikTok, which are the client posts in exchange for the brand and promotes their product in some way. So I'd say that's a large function of my job.
mm,
Since then, I've also started working a little bit with our tennis group, which is a much, larger group with more
yeah,
clients, but helping with some, similar work, procuring endorsement deals for our tennis talent as well. So I think there's a distinction among sports agents between someone who's more of like a traditional manager and someone who's more of a marketing agent. So
mm,
managers, of course, help out with visas and their travel schedule and their exemptions or tournament invites. And then marketing agents are more so responsible for their endorsement deals and helping, you know, make them money off the court or off the course. So I'm in that second camp where the
mm.
professional athletes is more so helping them, with their income outside of their earnings.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, and that was really interesting to hear. Obviously, I've interviewed other people in like basketball and football and other like NIL agents, but I haven't. This is the first time I'm hearing about golf, and it's really interesting on how you guys work like that. So, golf has become a really interesting sport from a business perspective with LIV, PGA Tour changes, and a completely new generation of stars. How does that shifting landscape affect how you approach talent representation in golf specifically?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's changed a lot since COVID. I think that's when most people can point to like that first change. And for me, I think that change really has been like digitally native. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of, YouTube golfers and golf influencers have kind of come out of that birth of the COVID golf wave. And, users, viewers started watching YouTube golf and at astonishing numbers. And those folks' platforms have grown tremendously. And luckily at WME, we've been at the forefront of those talents that have,
Mm-hmm.
started those YouTube channels and those golf specific, creators. And we represent, luckily a lot of the top clients in that space. And what I've noticed is that brands have, you know, shifted dollars in some way towards some of those digital creators just because of their engagement rate. Now, I
Yeah,
think it's no secret that a golf creator on YouTube or Instagram with millions of followers and a really strong engagement rate who can, create content on their own without a production, team
yeah,
is, potentially more valuable than, a tour player who's ranked, not in the top 50 in the world, who doesn't have a big following and can't create content. Brands are noticing that they get more bang for their buck and more ROI by
yeah,
spending with those talents. So I think the endorsement deal landscape in golf has shifted very digitally. Now, of course, your top 30 players in the world on the tour are still being paid handsomely. Those deals are very strong. Those aren't going anywhere. But the
yeah,
digital landscape is changing that quite a bit. From, when 5 years ago, if you were, maybe the 50th player in the world, but you could still get some strong endorsement deals. I think some of those dollars, even the endemic space like club and apparel, has shifted a bit. So we'll continue to see that, in my opinion. And I think the digital landscape's not going anywhere. I think these creator-led golf leagues and tournaments and events are going to be even bigger than ever going forward. More brand dollars will go towards it. Streamers and platforms will want to have the rights to those. So that's probably the biggest shift we've seen in the landscape.
yeah. I think the digital landscape is really huge, especially with NIL, and how big NIL has become because you've seen some college athletes stay in and stay in college instead of going professional just because of the money that they're making via NIL, and that digital landscape is has had a huge impact on that. And obviously, if you can build a personal brand of digital landscape, I think you can do a lot of stuff in today's world. So, working at WME, what does it actually take to land and sign a new client at the level WME operates at?
So, of course, WME, we represent the biggest and the best stars in the world across, their verticals. But I think something that we pride ourselves on here is signing multi-hyphenate talent. What I mean by that is signing, you know, if an athlete is an athlete, that's not all they do. They have the ability to, be on a podcast, write a book, star in an unscripted or scripted series,
Mm-hmm.
you know, be be a leader at a speaking conference. We like to sign talent that can touch multiple verticals. Um, and of course, when you see these A-list stars across film, television, music, sports, a lot of them have many other ventures that they're part of outside of their, what they're known for. So if they're known for being an actor, some of them also like to produce and direct or star in commercials or do speaking engagements. If someone's a star athlete, maybe they also like to, invest in companies or start their own brand, or, have their own podcast. So I think we look for talent that we can help, you know, build out their business in multiple verticals. And when you do that, that means you have to bring in a team that can service all of that. So of course, every talent will always have their point person or two that is really their day-to-day agent and contact. But we have such a large flywheel here of our divisions across, film, television, sports, music, digital, et cetera. So when we, go to pursue a client of that size, we really bring in and put a full team around them so that they're supported in every area. So even if it's not this year, but in 2 or 3 years, if they want to, write their own autobiography, we have a team that can help them do that. Or if they, want to get a guest appearance in a non-scripted TV show, we can help them with that. So it's really finding who the right people with internally that you want to surround a talent with and putting together just a killer team that can execute anything they need. And it's really having no pride and ownership. I think agents fail when they try to do everything themselves, especially if it's an area they don't know, they're not an expert in. But the good thing about WME is in each division, there's experts in their own field in all of those divisions. So as opposed to doing five things for one client, we from that one agent works on, we bring in five agents as part of a team, and now that client's fully supported in every angle. And when someone's asleep in the U.S., they have someone awake in Australia working on them,
Yeah.
or in Europe working on them. So they're just fully supported.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think getting multi hyphenated talent is huge because even having like a top 50 talent in the world is might not be enough sometimes, especially with the new digital landscape, as you mentioned in the previous question. And also, I just wanted to follow up on what you just said. How do you classify somebody as multi hyphenated? Like, do you have a sit down conversation with them? Do you take a look at their portfolio when you're landing clients? How do you decide that this person right here is multi hyphenated, and I think he would be a great addition to our team.
Yeah, I think that happens in the evaluation process. Like I think,
Mm-hmm.
before anyone is signed at WME, there's usually not usually, there are multiple conversations that take place and multiple internal meetings, about how we feel about this person before moving forward to represent them, because representing someone is it's a massive deal for us. It's a massive decision for them personally, and
Yeah,
it has to be the right fit. So when evaluating talent, we want to look at and understand, okay, not only what is their performance, of course, as an athlete and their trajectory to win, because on the sports side at least, that's the most important thing is can they win, right? We want to
yeah,
represent the top 10 players, top five players in the world in every sport, in every regard. So I think winning and their actual, ability to do that is first and foremost. But outside of that is what does their social media platform look like? Like, do they have an audience? Do they have fans? Do they have a
mm-hmm.
community? What else are they interested in? Like, what are their hobbies outside of their sport? Um, do they play instruments? Can they sing? Can they act? How are they in front of the camera? Can they be in front of an audience and do a keynote speech? Can they be in front of C-suite execs and these buyers of these major brands and be able to hold their own? I think those are the things we look at before signing someone. And when someone, checks all of our boxes, that's usually, a pretty surefire sign that they'd be a good fit here.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think just like I mentioned earlier, multi hyphenate talent, and digital landscape. I think having a strong social media profile is gonna go a really long way as in terms of landing an agent and even landing like big brand deals. Now I wanted to shift over a little bit towards your overall path. You've had a lot of experience in the athlete representation world, and for someone trying to break into sports talent representation today, what would you say is the most important early move is? Because you've done internships, you've done networking, you've gone to grad school. What do you think out of those steps was the most important?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say your network is everything in this world, and there's just so few jobs and openings. I think
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing is, especially at the major, agencies. Well, I guess I'll start with the boutique agencies. They're smaller, so there's rarely, you know, roles open. You won't see them posted on LinkedIn or on their website. It's truly like if you know, you know, and
yeah,
the only way to be in the know is through networking and having connections. On the major agency side, kind of the big three. There's of course more traditional routes in, like the mailroom floating class program, which is a great route in for anyone who's looking to break into the agency world. Um, but still, I think that having a strong resume and application is really important. But you also have to make sure you have contacts and connections who can help, refer you through the process and guide you through the process. It's just so competitive these days. So I'd say for kids who are in college who are looking to break into the space, get involved first, at school. Now, whether that's, volunteering for, the athletics department or, a specific team or starting a club around NIL and just showing interest and involvement in us, in a way that, depicts that you have the skill set that could make you a good agent one day is the first thing. And then, use your alumni network reach out to people cold on LinkedIn. I know it's daunting and scary, but it does
Yeah,
work. And people out there who have time will make time for you.
yeah,
And there's a lot of, agents are very busy people. We travel a
yeah,
lot, but we will make time and we will, have calls and help lend a guiding hand. And I think the biggest thing I would say is you'll probably have a lot of first introduction calls with agents as you're trying to network. It's really important that you stay in touch with them and on top of them.
yeah,
Now, it's going to be hard for me to remember every person I spoke to from 6 months ago, but the,
yeah,
the people who continuously reach out to me and stay connected or just check in with me or send me articles. Oh, I saw this. You guys did this. This is cool. Can we schedule a catch-up call? It's like that second and third touch point with someone that you network with that is really important.
yeah,
You can have 100, you know, intro calls with agents, and if you don't do anything else on the back of that, it won't go anywhere. Like I think it's more beneficial to have, if you had five really good calls, to stay in touch with those five people consistently throughout the year and check in with them. And then when an internship pops up, then you have a real genuine connection. You can ask them, "Hey, do you mind referring me?" And I think
yeah.
that's my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, I think definitely staying connected with your network is very important. That's something I'm trying to do myself because as many times as many guests and stuff that I talk to on my podcast, just staying connected with them is definitely the hardest part because it's really easy just to have an intro call with them, have a podcast with them, be like, "Yo, here's our episode," and that's it. And it's kind of like no more speaking after that. So I think that's really important, and that's something I'm trying to do myself. So I agree with you. That's like very very valuable advice.
Yeah, and it works. I got my job here at WME because I reached out cold over LinkedIn to an agent on the team I'm currently on. So
Yeah.
it does work.
Yeah, cold calling is something which can definitely be scary at first, and that's what I tried. Cold emailing, cold DMing people on LinkedIn, and I think once you really sit through it and you go through the rejections, you're definitely down. You're down to get a lot of yeses as well in the process. So, lastly, for the students and aspiring sports business professionals in my audience who want a career like yours, representing top athletes, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them that nobody else is telling them?
I'd say the one piece of advice that they're probably not getting out there is that you should be reading and consuming everything and anything about this industry daily. I think, you know, what you read and what you consume shows who you are as a person, and that's what will make you stand out and be the most impressive version of yourself that you can be when you do get the opportunity to speak with an agent or an exec or any type of exec in the sports industry. So there's plenty of podcasts, there's plenty of books, there's daily articles written about our industry and what we do and who we
Yeah,
represent and what deals are getting done. And you should, if you want to be in this industry, you should be aware of all of that because you'll never know who you run into. And if you're prepared at that time and you can bring up something like, oh, I saw this client did a deal with XYZ brand because it was in Sports Business Journal yesterday.
yeah,
And someone knowing that when you meet them, it just goes a long way.
yeah,
And that's something that I know personally I would remember someone by and remember them forever if they met me, on a one-off occasion or even in a networking um, context and they brought up a deal that someone on our team or a client did here. It would just show that they're informed, that they're as passionate about the industry as they say they are. So
yeah.
that's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I think definitely showing your passion is much more important than telling them that, oh, you're passionate about it, because I can tell you that I'm passionate about it, but without me showing it, it's really hard for you to believe. So I think that was a really great way to wrap up the episode. First of all, I appreciate you taking the time today, and thank you for sharing your insights. If you guys want to connect with Michael or check out his work, you can find his links in description below. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen. I'm Kush, and I'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Kush.